Hey Sydney, hey Kat.
Hi,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm also amazing. Yeah, I'm just inviting Marino and Kat for co-host and
Oh,
sent you the invite, Marino and Kat.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Sydney.
hi, Marino. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm just getting through my second cup of coffee, and you know how that is for me.
It's funny.
Coffee is life.
Me too. Me too. This is my second cup.
I
So
need like 300 more just to get through the day.
Hey Kat,
Hi, Kancha.
I'm not able to add you as co-host. I think Twitter has changed some regulations or anything. Like
Oh,
it's just
no
me to
worries.
do. Yeah.
Mm.
So we will wait for a couple of minutes, and then we can start off.
So Sydney, what are your end of year plans? Are you doing anything for the holidays?
Oh, yes, I'm taking an entire week off, which is probably something we're going to talk about today versus having, unlimited time off versus structured time off. So I saved all my structured time off to take it off with my kids for a week, and I'm going to do nothing, hopefully. Do fan bam time. What about you, Marino?
Very much the same. I've got 3 more days tomorrow, starting tomorrow. I'm actually off today, but I've got tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, and then I am off for 2-ish weeks, 2 weeks and a day, which is good because I literally don't want to think about anything. I don't want to work. I don't want to think about. I actually don't want to think about technology for a while, and that doesn't necessarily extend out to my PS5, but it does mean that you probably won't see me online or doing anything in the community for a while. I think my brain needs a bit of a rest and a reset and just some relaxation. I've been going a little hard this year, and I feel like if I don't stop, there might not be some of this energy in 2024. So I need a bit of a break.
Yes, that is so important to put yourself first in your family because I know you've got littles and we don't do that, right? We don't give ourselves permission to take the time to be human, right? And it's something that I think we should talk about today too, even though this is more about like navigating the future of hiring. But how are you supposed to get hired if you're not healthy? None of us are healthy, right? We're not putting ourselves first or family first, which is something that I definitely want to talk about today for sure.
I it this the whole thing hasn't even begun yet, and I already feel called out, but in a great way. So
Yeah, these are the things, right? It's going to be a fun conversation. It'll go in all sorts of areas, hopefully.
Yeah, so let's start. I think we have a couple of folks in the audience. So,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, hey everyone, thanks for joining in today's Twitter space. Today we have our amazing speaker Sydney with us who will share about all the things most people are too afraid to talk about, which is in hiring and job seeking, along
Hmm.
with some brownie interview tips. So, welcome
Yeah.
Sydney, it's great to have you. Also, a
Hi.
quick shout out to my amazing co hosts of the day, Marino and Kat. Welcome in the space, and we are all set for an awesome time. So, today it's all about demystifying the hiring scene and tech job landscape of 2024 and
Hmm.
getting you excited for the next steps in your tech career journey. Also, if
Hmm.
you have any questions, thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and we will be happy to take them up later. And this space will be useful for tech veterans, folks who want to change their jobs or careers into tech, and students, of course. So,
Hmm.
yes, let's start it and learn together with Sydney. Would you like to give yourself a quick shout out and share your experience in the tech hiring ecosystem?
Sure, sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you virtually. My name is Sydney. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I have been working on the back end tech side of recruiting for the better part of 24 years. Believe it or not, my first client was Sun Microsystems, if you can even stand that. That is way back, right? So I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, and I've broken a lot on purpose. And we're going to talk about those things. There's so much to cover. We can talk about trends. We can talk about what to do, what to expect, the backside secrets of what recruiters really are looking at or should be looking at. I'm open to anything at this point, but yeah, it's really great to meet you all right now. I am currently a technical recruiting manager at a company that is local, a local startup here in Phoenix that does property intelligence. So data is forefront. We'll talk a lot about data because that is one of the projections for hot and heavy in 2024. And obviously that goes with all sorts of things. So yeah, just excited to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
That's awesome. It's a pleasure to have you here. So you
Mhm.
know that everybody is saying that in 2023 the market was like totally bad. There were so many layoffs and yeah, and people are struggling to find jobs. So how would
Mhm.
you describe the current state of hiring in the tech industry?
Well, I have to ask, is this a family-friendly show? Because Sydney sometimes has a little bit of uh, I do swear a bit, so if I do, I'm going to apologize up front. But
Go
it
for it.
is
Go for it,
okay.
please.
Can we just say shit show?
Go
Let's
for
say
it.
2023 is shit show. I haven't seen anything like this in a while. Um, the last time I saw it this bad was 2008, and that was when the recession hit. Before that, it was, yes, I was part of the whole dot bomb bust. So I've been through two market corrections previous to this now, and it's rivaling that. I cannot stress that enough. It is. I was part of two layoffs, and I didn't see it coming. And these were with two startups that had just received Series B funding and a lot of money. But one of those companies has now been purchased by a large organization, and this was this week, and I'm super excited for them because they were really good to me. There is nice people that happen through rifts and layoffs, and companies that actually care about you, and then there's some companies that don't. So I'd say 2023 was a very hard year for a lot of people, specifically in talent acquisition and sales, because those are two of the areas that get cut first, right? Because you would think, oh, revenue generating or company generating individuals should be on staff. Well, they also cut them first. So it's been an interesting landscape to say the least. So let's attack it. What do you want to talk about first?
I will pass on to Kat if she wants to go ahead.
Okay, so I've actually been really excited about this, and I'm probably going to fumble my words because I was up way too late last night. And this is kind of early on West Coast time, but it's okay. I'm making my coffee, so we'll get through it.
Yes.
So, I'm actually really curious to get context before we
Hmm.
dive deeper into the specifics
Yeah.
of individual candidates and how to
Hmm.
optimize yourself for that pipeline. So,
Hmm.
when considering the the higher level business decisions
Hmm.
around acquisition or opening job recs or transferring things around and shuffling, what you're recruiting for, things like that.
Hmm.
What are the just general understanding, like rudimentary, what are the rudimentary knowledge things? See, I told you too early, no coffee. That
You
we
need some
really need to
coffee.
understand. I know it's in my hand. That we really need to understand to also have an almost empathetic understanding of who we are marketing ourselves to as
Hmm.
candidates, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, organizations are also organic and human, and how should we understand them at a distance before we really jump into the middle of the recruiting pipeline?
Oh gosh, that's a really great question. It's a hard one to answer, but also very simple, right? Everyone forgot that we are dealing with human beings along the way. You're either a piece of paper or a machine that puts code out, and then they're going to monetize you, right? So, and it's gotten a bad rap because, recruiting in general, there are people who are in it to win it, and there are people who are there for the humans, like myself, right? Creating beautiful, robust teams full of colorful faces and different voices and different places and thoughts, right? Because that's how you build beautiful software is you give people the opportunity to speak and share their mind, because along with them they bring different parts of the world, different parts of technology, different parts of just human life, right? I think trying to understand the landscape of the employer, let's be honest, it starts dollars and cents, right? I hope I'm going down the right area here. So what you need to do, I think, or what people should consider, is to start there and then make it tactical. A lot of times, when you start to enter yourself into the pipeline, it's scary. It's scary. How do you talk about yourself? You can talk about your team, you can talk about your product, but how dare you talk about yourself, because that's very egocentric, right? Right?
I'm
So,
from the Midwest. I feel that.
yes, right? There's some interesting statistics out there that state, and I'm going to pick on some places and generalities today, because I think we need to split this right open and rip the band-aid off. um, the the challenge for most is that y'all, and myself included, sitting down to write a resume, how do you even start? Why do I even talk about myself? It's too it there's no, I can't talk about myself because it was a labor of love with my team. Well, yeah, but you were a big piece of that, and you should own that shit. Just honestly, if anybody on this call right now is sitting there thinking, I need to look for a new job, write that down on a sticky. Own that shit. Own it. Sit down and look at what you're writing, or about just getting in the mind frame, because you got to get in the mindset of, okay, how am I going to be successful when I sit down to write my resume? Think about all the amazing things that you have done. Think about all the amazing things you've been part of. Think of the amazing product you work on, or the amazing team you're in, and sit there and then start to write it down. Again, there's a whole lot to be said about just sitting down and let words come out of your hands. Because if you were in a conversation, say you're sitting around at, a dinner table with friends, and someone asks you what you do, right? How would you describe it? Would you be a little vague, or would you kind of drill down? Well, you'd probably be a little vague at first, and then people will start asking qualifying questions, right? As you think and prepare yourself for the marketplace, I want you to skip through the fluff and go straight to the stuff. You have to be prepared to talk about this like you're selling the product, or you are in a design review, or you're doing a retrospective, and say, this is what I did, X, Y, and Z. I don't even know if that's been helpful.
So it almost sounds like we're almost taking a step outside of ourselves to market ourselves to these
Mm-hmm.
organizations, and really showing that self-encouragement for the
Yep.
whole resume writing experience.
Yes. Because how hard is it to talk about yourself? Raise your hand if you find a hard time like talking about yourself. There are people that are really, really good at it, and then there's the rest of us. Because life and people are told, you got to be part of a team. You can't use I statements. You can't use, I'm going to tell you, throw that out the window, because when you're looking for a job, this is all about you. This is all about, I did this. And yes, you balance it out with part of the team. We worked on it together. I'm a great collaborator. But again, you need to sell what you did, because that's what people like myself need to know. Because that is how we talk to hiring managers after we have our, 30 minutes in the sun with y'all, right? Again, we got to get you to the 30 minutes in the sun, and we can get to like how to prepare yourself for that. But again, just to even start to think about entering the market is do your research. Do your research about yourself. Put yourself first, because this is about you and your family and whatever family means to you, whatever your scenario is, you know. You've got to sit down and be like, well, what do I ultimately want? And what am I good at? And write it down. Sit down in front of a blank piece of paper, or if you're still handwriting, because a lot of that is archaic at this point. But sit down at your computer and just start to write all the things you've ever done. And I want you to treat your job search like your review, because we have to get really good and sharp about what we've done, because it means money on the other end in a yearly review. You should I believe, again, I believe and have seen a lot of success with people who have sat down and treated their job search and their resume like a review, because it helps you explain what,
Actually,
yeah,
I want to key into that just real
yeah,
quick, because
mm-hmm.
this was a little bit of a learning journey in my own experience so far as well.
Mm-hmm.
I promoted through a few different levels at my first tech job,
Yep.
and my first attempts trying to promote internally were met with cold interest at best. Um, and it actually took looking around to see the habits that the people advancing were making progress with.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them at the time, I was heavily email dependent for everything in my workflow. And
Mm-hmm.
I created a directory, and anything that came across my desk, which might be, in the moment seems useful at end of year review or when writing resume stuff for the future, I wouldn't
Yeah.
overthink it. If it occurred to me, maybe I should drop that in the career folder, I would just, add that label to it. It would be there. And then when it actually came around to being time for doing that chore of writing about yourself, right? It was
Yep.
much easier just because there was that archive of, hey, these were the highlights, right? These were
Yep.
those outcomes that really were recognized in the moment across the
Mm-hmm.
business. So whether it's for resume writing or for end of year, it's all self-promotion.
Yep.
And that was a singular habit that completely changed how fluent and comfortable I felt going into, those advancement scenarios.
Yep.
So thank you for calling that out as part of the
Yeah.
process and
Yep.
building funnels, feeding into when you're going to have to do those tasks is a forward thinking habit that I and at least several others around me have found success with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about how much documentation sucks in general, right? Who has time for it? I'll do it later. I'll do that. No, time is now. You are, because your future you will totally thank you for it. Another thing that might be helpful to those who, you know, you lose access real quick when shit goes sideways at work sometimes, right? So ensure that you have either a Google Doc or something, right? Because what you don't want to be doing is emailing from your work to your personal, because there's all sorts of security there too. Some people get called out on it and whatnot. What I would suggest doing is start a Google Doc and write down your weekly one on ones and talk about your accomplishments. I have a running Google Doc that I have with internally, obviously, with my COO, which I report into. And her and I talk about like, what did we do great? What do we need to work on? What are future projects? Sure as anything, that is going to go on my resume, because it's talking about yourself in a natural way, and it makes it less scary, right? Because you can be like, yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I did that. And I accomplished that, and I took it through to production, or I pushed this, you know, I pushed this all the way to the end. This is now in, live and out in the wild. And those are things that we need to talk about versus trying to pull that out of people when you're interviewing, meaning, on the recruiter end or on a hiring manager end, they want to see it, right? And they want to hear it as well. Like, You can very easily on this documentation make it as short and sweet as possible, but you better, especially in these technical roles, put what you created it in, right? What is it made of? Is it Java? Is it, what kind of cloud computing are you using? What are you using for data analysis? I mean, I'm trying to make it like big because there's a lot of different types of people here. But really focus down on like you're talking to a peer. And, oh yeah, tell me what you did in this PR. Okay, well, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I used this technology, and I used this technology, and this technology. If you have that, you can put that plainly on your resume, on your LinkedIn, on all sorts of places, but it helps give you that encouragement, which, like, psychologically, you're probably thinking, well, how am I supposed to remember all this stuff? But if you have it written down, it's in front of you, it will trigger you to have a story. Because what we are looking for in recruiting is the story about how you did it, when you did it, who you collaborated with, and what was the end product. Helpful? Dean Marino says 100%. Okay, get lots of 100%.
Yes, I really love those points, Sydney, and it's so motivational and encouraging as well. And I will certainly add that Google Docs idea with me. And yeah, so I will pass on to Marino. If you have any thoughts and questions for Sydney, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a couple. Let's think about developers because there's a lot of developers that show up to some of these
Yep.
spaces and even in the community. What should they be thinking about going into 2024 if they are either early career or mid career and trying to find their next thing? Should they focus on just the resume? Should they also maybe branch out and build out a little bit of a portfolio somewhere on GitHub?
Yep. So I would say definitely shine up your, if you're technical, GitHub, um, Stack Overflow, get involved in your in your interests, right? Like Marino, I know like you hold a ton of spaces for people. Get involved there. Try and talk about your experience in public places, whether that be a blog, whether that be your own Twitter handle. Like, Lord knows, y'all have probably seen me. I talk a lot about a lot of things. And, some people like it, some people don't. But then again, it's me, right? So that showcases who I am, and I'm not afraid of who I am. I'm going to peel this back a little bit. You have to be okay with who you are if you're going to go in these spaces. There's a lot of folks who maybe on the spectrum are neurodivergent that don't know how to start, right? And that's okay. The written word is great. Getting involved in talking and, putting in papers and doing keynotes and being on podcasts, that's great too. But you have to make space for yourself and what you're comfortable with doing. Now, I could sit here and be like, oh, get on a podcast every 2 months and you're going to be fine. Well, that's not reality for everyone, right? Let's, raise your hand if you're neurodivergent. I mean, I have been known to be on the scale. I am neurodivergent in my own way. And even though I put myself out there, it is really scary for me. I know I see Tim Banks on here. He can attest to that, right? He helps and walks me through. I've got guides. Barino, you're another one, right? Find people you trust to talk through some of that fear because everything you want is on the other side of that fear. Now, if you're not able to do it, there are other ways. Um, so get good with especially try and figure out your own special way of promoting yourself. Um, not to be like all like Kardashian about it because A, Kardashian and B, Kardashian. Don't like those, but try and get involved is what I'm trying to say. Get involved in the spaces that really get you going because no matter who you are as a person, your voice is loud and your experience is something that somebody could learn from. Even if you're, a developer that's sitting in the middle of Thailand and there's not much of a tech scene there, it's okay. Just get involved. Start asking questions. Find mentors. Find people who you trust. That's one thing that I would say to start. The other thing is ask for help. Ask for help because 2024 is all over the map. It's anyone's game at this point. I'm going to be quite honest with you because the market just corrected itself, right? Whether we like it or not, it just corrected itself. And layoffs are going to be layoffs, and the market is going to be really fluid. What I would say is gear yourself to talk tech. Get into the meat and the guts of what you're doing as far as technically, because people like myself, again, is that's what we want to hear, right? Did that answer your question, Marino?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of important bits there, especially about being able to put yourself out there and present
Mm-hmm.
yourself and being comfortable with that. I think a lot of folks are shy, right? They're a little shy to go out and tweet a little bit about themselves and some of their own
Right.
accomplishments. But the thing that folks miss is that if you're not promoting yourself, no one's going to do it for you. I mean,
No.
no one's going to step out of their own time to just go out and start promoting some of the work that you're doing. Some people might, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you've got to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to start somewhere, and that is through community. And you know, there's several people on this space that are in developer community or have their own communities that have bubbled up around them. And I'm sure I'm one of them. I didn't have community when I stepped out of GitHub. I had my GitHub community, right? But when I left GitHub, I was like, what am I going to do? My whole identity was GitHub. It was building the tech stack for the sale to Microsoft. It was, who was I as a person? And then when I left, which was a hard decision, but I did, I didn't feel valued anymore. I was scared. I looking back on what I did, building the entire infrastructure teams and the DevOps teams and site reliability organization. I mean, you name it, I did it. It was the technology side, everything from the um, the interface to the data centers was my work, and I worked my ass off. And then I all of a sudden looked around, popped my head up, and was like, I don't really feel like I know anybody, and I really don't feel like I'm good enough, and I really don't feel like I'm smart enough, and you know, I am this, I am that, all these like flogging feelings, right? And it was it was hard for me. So what did I do? I got real vulnerable, and I went to Twitter and said, "Hi, my name is Sidney Miller, and I've done a lot of things, but I'm most proud of what I did at GitHub." And so this was almost a year after I left GitHub because I inadvertently got talked into going to Amazon. That's a whole nother podcast. But 8 months later, I quit because of lots of reasons. And I know I'm not the only person out there that had that kind of experience with Amazon, but I quit. And then I took 6 months off because I was like, I am burned out. I am so burned out. My kids need me. I've been traveling a lot, you know, name all the things that come with big tech jobs, right? Um, and so I was like, I need a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I talked to my husband and I was like, I think I'm going to go to Twitter. And I had like 400 followers. And I just started talking about my experience at GitHub. And what happened was is the community around me gathered me up and started promoting me and started saying she's legit. She did these things. I started taking pieces of my resume and putting them in the comments underneath that post. That post had 180,000 views, and I ended up getting my next job from that post. But what I learned in that process is that it's okay to put yourself out there. I stick my neck out for my community, and those that know me well will attest. Like, I support my people, like, because of that one exact experience. I ended up with over 3,000 followers within, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks. And I was floored because why would I, a little girl in Phoenix, Arizona, who did some great work but doesn't know anybody from Adam, why would I get picked up like that? Because people believed in me and they saw the work that I did. And it can happen to you too. However it turns out. That's just my experience, my exposure, my experience, my opportunity. But I just opened myself up to being vulnerable and saying, hey, I need help. and people came and helped me. So I pay back, right? Like right now, I'm opening up my calendar to work with people who have been laid off, to look at their resume, to talk them through a lot of the emotional piece of this, because a lot of finding a new job is emotional. But community is really where I found my niche and where I've actually been able to make a lot of impact. And so, just try and get good with yourself. Again, I hope that answered the question, because there's just so much that's attached to that. But I can only speak to my own experience. That's where I would start.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick to
Yeah.
summarize, and then I'm going to glue two different things that Marino and you both said. So, first off, it sounds like we're almost scoping a currency for
Mm-hmm.
the professional talent pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
almost as if success, experience, whether your successes or failures, and authenticity together almost become your professional currency in a
Mm-hmm.
recruiting scenario. Would that,
Mm-hmm.
like, does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. It does.
Then Marino said, no one's going to do your self promotion for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. If you're
Mm-hmm.
promoting yourself, it gives people the opportunity, though. And what we've seen a lot in tech is like your story. Once you share that, your successes and your authenticity
Mm-hmm.
with others,
Mm-hmm.
and even some of those failures,
Yeah.
that's when you actually see the task of promoting yourself go from your own individual project to actually being a fairly community driven thing a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I think there's more to the self promotion than just, the chore of writing your resume or things like that,
Yep.
because it can also be a major community
Mm-hmm.
effort as well once you get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. People organically want to help, right? If you think back, if anybody's asked you for help, have you said no? Honestly, anybody on the panel, if you've raised your hand and said, I need help with XYZ in any community or anything, there are going to be people that are going to shy away from it. But those people that are out for themselves, right? And again, yes, in some portion, and yes, we're all out for ourselves. But there are people who are less giving with their time and their effort, and honestly, with the positive motion of the way the world should work. That's okay, because you don't need that energy anyways, right? So you got to find the people who will celebrate you and lift you up, because there are people out there. A lot of times people are like, hey, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to. No, no. If you ask for help, people will help.
Yeah, so Sydney, like
Hmm.
previously you shared about going from the story of you going from GitHub to Amazon and then the next
Hmm.
company. So like it was
Hmm.
really inspiring to hear, and I can relate with this at some levels. I've
Hmm.
seen a couple of friends who have been or are in that exact situation right now, and I hope that can help them.
Yeah.
So, like moving on,
Hmm.
when you hire, like how do you make sure that they are a good fit for the company and that they align with the culture and values? Maybe we could start by first discussing why cultures and value alignment is more important than tech skills.
Well, it's about the whole picture, right? Yes, it's the tech skills and your background that are going to get you in the door, but how do you work with people? How does the chemistry between yourself and the business, because again, this is a business. We can get into that in a second. But how does the core concepts of the work resonate with you? And what about you and your resume and your background resonates with the company? I think is what you're trying to get to, right? Did I lose you? Okay, I'm just going to go with it. Um, so, what I would say is culture is a thing that grows with each hire. And if a company tries to tell you that the culture is from top down, I'm gonna say that's some bullshit, because the culture is created with every single individual that is brought onto the organization. And it should be viewed that way, right? So there's all sorts of talk about inclusion, and there's all sorts of talk about diversity, and there's all sorts of this. What people don't look for is diversification of thought, as well as all the other things that DEI represents, right? Because you can get into a place where common thought is hired because they're too afraid to open the doors to anything that might challenge it. I'm going to say it again. Like, people are afraid of the challenge, especially at the leadership level, because they want everything to be the same, but they want money to go through the roof, right? So I would look at the team. I would ask about the team holistically. Who's in the team? Who are my peers? That is how you kind of get to the culture. That is a very fair question to ask, because if you think about all the things that you've been asked in interviews, flip the tables a little bit. Tell me about the culture in your team, not about the culture of the company, because that comes with it, but tell me about the culture of the team. What I do from a inclusion, diversification, and culture, if you want to kind of blanket it all together, is what is your thought process, right? Who are you as a person? What kind of questions are you asking? Those who ask a lot about culture are culture magnets because they are important to them enough to talk about it in the interview process, right? Again, really hard things to talk about, but I invite you to try, because there are a lot of people that are doing it now, because that's the age that we live in, as people are more they're more inclusion oriented, especially after what we just went through with COVID and layoffs and just people being forgotten as humans, especially in the interview process and the hiring process. And those that are most at risk are those who are in underserved populations. And I'm talking about it all. I'm talking from the LGBTQIA to people of color, to women, to veterans. They're just happy to be in the interview process, because there's this amazing statistic that when you go in to apply for a role, 90% of men will apply to a role if they're a 60% match or not. 100% of those in underrepresented categories will only apply if they are a 90% or 95% match to the actual tech skills. So what you're seeing is, and then I'm kind of jumping into the whole job description kind of scenario, and this is something that you all can and start asking questions against, is talk about they're going to list out the laundry list of technologies. There are things that are kind of soft, right? There are technologies that are key that you need to know, like, okay, this is a Kubernetes role. You have to know Kubernetes. But do you really need to know some of the other things? Maybe not, right? So apply for those roles. Put yourself out there. Put yourself first. Apply for it. And if you piss some recruiter off, fine. Okay, so what? At least you were seen. At least you put yourself in that path of success. There's been positions where I have applied for roles which I was maybe 70% qualified for, and I interviewed and I got the job. I'm one of those statistics. So let's dig deeper into some of these pockets too, if you guys are ready for it. Or you all, I'm sorry, I should correct that language.
I actually want to, you mentioned just a little bit about asking questions as a candidate as well. And I'm curious, from the hiring side of the table, what types of questions from candidates stand out to you once you've, seen them reach the interview process that really give you insights into the type of person? So you mentioned the culture piece, but are there any other types of questions that stand out and actually help promote really the quality of the person in front of you when they're asking?
Hmm. I would say, oh man, there's so many. Let me think of a really good one. I mean, there's always why do you work there? What do you love about the team? But what you can say is you know, what kind of team are you in? What is who is on your team, right? Like what types of individuals are on the team? Are they all from the same college? Are they all from the same company? Is there, how diverse is your team? And that could be from, anywhere from, the makeup of the team to the inclusion thought process to it covers a lot of different parts, but you could say, tell me about the team. What about the team makes them special? If you take it to the team, you're interested in the team versus just like a product, pushing product out, or just, the overarching, name brand of the company. The reason why I think that's important is because people don't ask. They don't ask me like, what is the team made of? Like, what are they working on? What pieces are they responsible for of the product? Get into the team level because that's exactly showing that you care about who you're surrounded with and what you're about to do. To me, that's a big question. You can also ask what is my skip level leadership style? What is your leadership style? Um, you can even turn the tables on and say, how have you handled a conflict between members on your team as a manager? That's going to tell you a lot. And those things are not off limits. Now, if you're not comfortable asking those, I totally understand because those are very, very big questions. But why not ask them? All they're going to say is no, right? And if they say no, pretty much know that that's not going to be the place you want to work. These are all my kind of things that I ask. But if somebody were to ask me that, I'd be like, wow, they really, really want to know and they really want to make sure that they are a good fit and that we're a good fit for them, you know? Um, so hard questions are okay to ask, I think. And they also show that it's going to show that you have the ability to ask tough questions, which a lot of people don't because there's that fear factor of like I'm just glad to be in an interview process. I'm just glad to be seen. I haven't had I got laid off 6 months ago and I really need this opportunity where everything just becomes yes, 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 yes. Make some of these more about in your variation of comfortability because everybody has a different threshold for that, but ask some questions that are top of mind for you. What is the leadership style of this organization? How do you document? Do you do retrospectives? What happens if something happens on the team? How do you deal with that? Those would be some buy-in questions. And then, the normal ones. Tell me about the product. Tell me what I'd be working on. Tell me about what portion of the product I'd be, or, whatever it is that you'd be working on, would I be responsible for? But personally, I think the culture is going to be asking them what kind of leader they are and what kind of leader you would potentially be interviewing with if you're talking to a recruiter. Those are really impactful for people like myself. I can't speak for all recruiters because, obviously, but in my experience, it shows you genuinely care about yourself and that you're going to put yourself first in the process.
All right, I've got a very, thank you so much for sharing that. And I've got a very specific question, which is two-part. And
Yay.
I'm asking it in two parts because I kind of want you to give the different answers and allow people to see the comparison between the two. It really comes
Mm-hmm.
down to this. So you're a junior IC and you're looking for that promotion. You're not getting it internally, so now you're looking at outside organizations for where you can seek that promotion.
Mm-hmm.
How can you prepare yourself to go from a junior IC to somewhat of a senior IC? IC stands for individual contributor for folks that
Mm-hmm.
aren't familiar with the abbreviation. And then if you were a senior IC, right? And you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to seek that leadership role. What
Mm-hmm.
are things that you can do to prepare yourself to get into that leadership role externally? Let's just say you want to apply for some roles in both scenarios. How would you approach those two scenarios, Sydney?
Talk about it in your resume and on your LinkedIn. So if you've had the opportunity to lead projects, if you've had the opportunity to be a key contributor in projects, you can talk about yourself as being a pillar of growth for whatever it is that you had just worked on. That's what they want to see. It's not just titling, right? So if you are in that transition, right, you want to step into a new role, right, Marino? With through
Correct.
like promotion. Okay, so this isn't like just promotionary things. Remember when we talked about your review? Talk about those things. Don't talk about like I could do this or I could do this. You say I actually led this team to do this. And then, but again, what about those folks that don't get the opportunity to lead because they're not the loudest duck in the room, right? So what you need to do, in my professional opinion, is really sit down and write out. Again, I'm really big on this whole like writing down thing. Write down the things that you've been responsible for, been a key contributor of, and what it is that you want. Because once you discuss what you've done, you've got to be clear on what you want to do. So think of your mentors. Think of the person that is the senior most tenured on your team, the principal or whatnot. Sit down with them and ask them, right? How did and you could phrase this up and lob it up like I'm looking for promotion. What should I be doing to take myself in that next step? I think volunteering for, I don't want to say more work because that's not fair, but a different type of work than what you're doing day in and day out with more responsibility is how you're going to get there. And then also get involved externally because so much, remember, we're talking about community. You can bring your community work into a professional interview all the time. And I almost want you to, because if you go outside and you spend your personal time on doing other things to advance people further or advance a product further through your GitHub, right? Have your GitHub freshened up. Make sure you talk about your projects there. Get involved in community. So have those situations ready, but really ask people who have been there, that have leaped over, how they've done it, because you're going to get a bunch of different types and a bunch of different advice, but start to document. For those who are, yes, did I hear you?
Oh, I was just going to reiterate. I know I've seen different spaces and such about like
Mm-hmm.
getting into DevRel from other roles and things like that.
Sure.
And your suggestion came to mind, or brought to mind, how I discovered DevRel myself,
Yeah.
because I didn't actually know about DevRel until just a couple, 3 years ago.
Right.
And there's a chance he will end up hearing it. But I basically found someone at the company I was at
Mm-hmm.
whose like job description and things like that was everything that I was most passionate about in the work that I participated in, whether it was part of my
Uh-huh.
core role or not. And so I found them at the company and I was like, just completely out of the blue, sent them a message. Hey, how do I be you when I grow up? Right.
Yep.
And it absolutely like set the stage for being able to change directions professionally and get
Yep.
into this type of work. But that applies to all kinds of roles. Find the role model, whether it's at your company that you're at now or at other organizations that you admire, and start building just the social and professional network that supports you along your journey.
Yeah. Like that's the that's the one thing that I will say, and thank you so much for bringing that up because it's so important that there is a live example of that. Ask for help or ask for time, you know? Ask people inherently want to, even though they like there are some people that don't. Let's be quite honest. But there are, look at all the people that are in this space. I bet you if you raised your hand right now and said, I need help with this, at least 1 to 5 people would say, what you got, let's help you, right? Because these are good humans. There are still good humans in this world. And if you ask, you're going to build your story and you're going to find that confidence too, because a lot of it is confidence, knowing that you can take it to the next step, talking about yourself like you can take it to the next step because you're smart enough and you're good enough. And, it's it's proven through your work and also proven through what you can can claim you don't know. That's another thing too is you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything. But you need to know the core of what it is to get to the next step. Who knows what that looks like? But so I hope that that helps with the stepping like leveling up. Um, you can even ask, so and then when you're in an interview situation, you can even ask, is there anything that I can tell you that would make you feel more comfortable and confident about me stepping into this role? It's a great question. And you can even ask that for even senior management, right? So for to go with the whole promotion and maybe seeking a promotion externally because a lot of times you get stuck, right? You get leveled and stuck. Um, with management, bring out those people skills and talk about your people skills because when you're in IC, it's tech, development, pushing code, pushing code, pushing code. But then everybody forgets that you could have been just because you don't have a team lead designation doesn't mean that you didn't lead a project, that you didn't lead a team, that you didn't lead a mentor an individual on the team. These are all things that it's okay to talk about even though you don't get paid for it, but it's a piece of your job. There's a lot of pieces of your job that you don't get paid for, quote, quote, on paper, that we are not okay with talking about because it's not on paper. So sit down and think about what that is. And if you want to be in management and leadership, try and find those opportunities where you can lead projects and you can lead people and you can get involved in, maybe some of the employer groups that are out there, technology groups. But then again, externally, you can also lead by example in your communities, like Marino and everybody who put this podcast together or this space together should be talking about this in interviews. It has nothing to do with your resume. It should go on your resume, but this is stuff that makes you human and gives you leadership and proves that you care about a common goal and bringing people with you. So it's as much as your resume and your interviewing could be about your business life, it could also be about your personal civic and community ability as well. Did I answer your question, Marino, in 2 parts?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
you
good.
you reminded me of some things that I tend to overlook in terms of accomplishments and just some of the good stuff that I used to do. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
for that reminder.
Yeah, yeah. Are we short on time? Do we have only 4 minutes left?
We have as much time as you want, Sydney.
Oh, well, I have as much time as you need. What are we talking about next?
We have one question from the audience. Would you like to take that up, Sydney?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, so Siddhant has been asking that I have been trying to find a good role for a couple of months, got a
Mhm,
couple of interviews for several roles, but it didn't seem to be a good fit. Any tips
mhm.
on how I could change my approach towards the process?
Yes, you know what you do is you ping me through Twitter and you set up time with me so we can walk through all the variations, right? Um, I would say that's a really super loaded question, and I'm not trying to like kick the can down the road here, but what I am trying to do is give you an opportunity to be the highlight, focused time. Um, the one thing that I will tell you in this job market, don't give up. Don't do it, because you are worthy and you will find your job. This is what's happening right now is dollars and cents. It has absolutely nothing to do with human beings, which sucks. I'm going to tell you, this market sucks, sucks, sucks. It is not fun. It is not great, but it will change. It always does. Okay? So book some time with me, book some time with people that you care about in your professional life or even in your personal life, and sit down and talk to them. Because the more and more you get talking, the more and more you're able to talk about yourself, the better you're going to do in interviews. Okay. The more and more you talk to people like myself in recruiting or in leadership roles that can look and give you advice on your resume. I'm going to actually stop right now and give all of you a tip. Look at your resume, and if it says created policy and procedure or created process, blah, 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 blah. And it's just a bunch of words and there's no technical in it. Tell me about what that project was made out of. Tell me get in, go as deep as you can to explain it. And I don't care if your resume is 5 pages long. I don't, because I need to see what it is that you're working on, because that exactly is what's going to get you into the interview process. People are too vague. Get granular, especially about technology. Tell me about what you're building. Tell me about what you're making. Tell me about what did you develop as far as a community for the company if you're a developer advocate? What is the product that you supported through some of these things? What was it made out of? Get technical. That is the one thing that I will tell you in the last 24 years that I wish I had told every single person that I've wanted to hire. Just write. Sit down and write. And who cares if your resume is 9 pages long? Because you can always trim the fat. You can trim the fat out. But until you get the content and context in there, almost think of it like a job description. You know, when you read a job description and it's like must have X, Y, Z, and must have blah 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 blah, but it really doesn't tell you what you will be building. That's a problem because they don't know what they need. But when they tell you, like some of these really great job descriptions are going to get into the product and what it's built in, do that for what you've done, because then that gets you in the door. It makes you look, it's that much sharper of a view for people who are going through a lot of resumes at one time. If you're like created and pipelined and did analysis of XYZ, I'm making things up because 2 cups of coffee at this point may not even make sense, but seriously try and get as granular as possible. It does matter. And then you can strip it out. But what I would say is book time with people that you trust. Hit me up in my DMs. They should be open. I'd love to spend some time with you.
So I actually have a bit of a like personal experience question for you. So we're talking about being your own like hype squad, cheerleading almost, and marketing yourself with enthusiasm, right? And when you're on top of, a recent success or victory or some astronomical, tech stack that has been a blast to, just rock out amazing accomplishments with, it's really a lot easier in those moments to play that hype role. So right now we're seeing, a lot of insecurity and a lot of almost heartache even with layoffs across the industry. It Having experienced that for the first time myself earlier this year, how do you go from really the rejection, that breakup letter or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
to immediately turning around in this crisis mode and authentically and warmly approaching this chore, this job even of promoting yourself after, some professional trauma. Yeah, really.
Oh, okay. I love you for asking this question. When somebody pulls a rug out from underneath you, whether it's of your own doing, someone else's doing, or a business decision, you have to grieve. Now, Lord knows I can say this because, and again, this is a whole nother podcast, but I lost my mom to COVID. Okay. I am still grieving, right? It's 3 years. It'll be on the 21st. It'll be 3 years. Sucks. Can't tell you how much it sucks. When I lost my job twice in 1 year, even though it wasn't a person I was grieving myself. And I had to get good, and I had lots of people in my corner and lots of support to push me into like going back to therapy, making sure that I'm okay, talking to my husband, talking to, people that I love, um, and knowing that shit happens. But you have to be okay with grieving in whichever that means to you, because grief looks different for everyone. And I'm not trying to dilute the fact that grief is grief and it's there and everybody goes through it, but it is a version of grief, because let's be honest, how many people identify themselves through work? It's what you do, right? If you sit down and somebody says, "Oh, tell me about yourself." "Oh, well, I am a, technical recruiting manager at, Batch Service here in Arizona, and we're this and we're that." Well, no, that's great what you do, but who are you, right? And I talk to people all the time, and yet again, here I am talking about Tim Banks, but today, this week, he was like, business is business, regardless. You've got to not be so married to your job. And it's so true, because that's not my identity. So I had to grieve real hard, and it took me a while, right? So what people don't do is give themselves grace after this stuff. They start like reeling, right? Oh my God, I need to find a job. And yes, I mean, money is important. I mean, let's not sidestep that. Money is really, really crazy important, right? Because how are you supposed to make all the things work? That's where you go. You go in fight or flight mode. What I'm here to tell you is it's okay to take a minute and be like, that sucks. I'm devastated. Or maybe you're like, screw this. I'm totally cool. This is great. I'm going to enjoy some free time. I don't know very many people that are like that. I know a ton of people that are like, oh my God, I'm going to start flogging myself because I lost the job because this, that, and this. No, you know what? In this market, things are happening to you, not through you. Okay. There are people that, do things and then unfortunately are no longer employed, but that's, there's other reasons pushing that, right? But this is happening to you, not through you. And once you start to breathe that in and start to realize, okay, you know what? I'm not the only person in this position. Then you've got to sit with yourself and figure out what you need as a human being to put your next foot forward. Is it therapy? Is it chocolate? Is it, I mean, chocolate's a big thing for me. Is it coffee? Is it a hug? Is it your mentor? Is it your loved one? It could be all of those things. And that's perfectly okay. Just make it perfectly okay for you. You have to get good with identifying what you need at the human core level before you can put yourself out there, because it's good. People are going to smell it a mile away that you're not feeling secure of yourself, that you don't know how to talk about yourself, and doing all the things that we've just talked about. In this market, it is okay to get upset, to cry, to not feel good about yourself, but you better pick yourself up because you are worthy. And you've got to find people who will tell you that. And you've got to find people that'll give you the opportunity to feel okay. Okay, so work on yourself before you put yourself in front of any sort of interview or hiring manager. Send resumes out, yeah, all that great stuff. But you have to be capable and confident and breathe it in and hopefully mourn that and let it go. Or at least try to. At least try to. In a perfect world, yeah, hey, cool, I'm over that, let's go. I'm still grieving the rifts that I went through this year and last year. I mean, holy cow. And I'm even employed and I'm still grieving that, right? Because I loved working at those companies. And I love working at the company I'm at. But I hope that makes sense, is give yourself the human space to heal.
Wow. Okay. So, Sydney, obviously, you've been through quite a lot. So, thank you so much for being here and sharing today. That just went deep, and I'm pretty sure I had goosebumps there for a minute. So, thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, let's talk about these things. Nobody talks about the human portion of this stuff. It's a loss and it's an ego hit and it's all these things, but it's also normal and it happens to everyone.
That actually leads into something else that I'd really like to get into.
Yeah.
There are past jobs that I still like mount on a pedestal, and they're like this beacon, like I'm really, really proud of what happened while I was there. I'll say my time at Red Hat was one of those. Just a phenomenal experience because I was in the right place at the right time, around the right people, and we got to just focus on mission and churn out things that were really exciting to deliver. What But if I look back on what Red Hat means to me now, and this is just my own experience, it's almost like I went through some of that grieving process when those glory days for me at Red Hat came to a close long before I even left Red Hat, right? So I'm curious, when should you consider, let's say you're not backed into a corner and forced to start job hunting right away, it's not an emergency, you're still comfortably employed. At what point should you consider whether or not you are still in the best place for who you are now and who the company is now? Even if that was an amazing fit for a long time, it's not necessarily the forever job. Do you have any advice on when to question the daily routine and the status quo, just to evaluate whether or not that is still the best return on your own investment for yourself?
Yeah. Trust your gut every stinking time. And easy to say, right? But have you been in a situation where you're like, that kind of feels and smells like shit? I think that's shit. When stuff starts to bubble up and over, or you're starting to question a lot, because questioning is good because it'll either put you in the path of success or it'll put you in, I'm out the door, right? There's a very distinct difference in the feeling of each of those. Okay. I have been in situations where I knew it was time for me to go, or else I was going to get exited because, I like to point out things that people get uncomfortable about, right? When I got to that point, I was like, I got to get out because I'm not going to be successful here. And if not, then it's going to end badly. And I'm going to be grieving, and then I'm going to feel bad about myself, and then I'm going to feel this, and then I'm not going to find the right job, and then I'm going to get right back into the same place that I was at, right? Intuition is something that people disregard a lot. And yeah, maybe I'm a little bit more on the woo-woo scale, but hey, have you met me? Like I'm definitely into energy. I'm definitely into like the feeling. If your hands get clammy when you start going to work, you wake up and you're nervous because you're afraid you're going to get your ass kicked that day, or something's going to go wrong and then you're going to get blamed. Somebody's being an asshole on your team and isn't course corrected. These are all things that we sweep under the rug that are predecessors for time to go, right? I think that if you are able to be in a scenario where these things happen, but you can address them in a like non-confrontational way, but in a confrontational way, because everything like these are confrontations. Like no matter way you can sugarcoat it any way you want to, HR, but it's not going to be anything other than you sticking up for yourself in a situation and being part of the solution. Hopefully that's it, right? I there's so many variables, right? There's so many variables, but physical cues, mental cues, tune into those. And if you can't bring them up in a safe way, that's also a problem, right? So start to really think. Don't let the work rush you by, the things that are actually keeping you in the role. What keeps people in the role? The people they work with, the camaraderie they have, the way you feel after you deliver something as a team or as an individual contributor, because there are still those opportunities. Not it's, sometimes it's a team sport, sometimes it's an individual contribution sport, right? Physical cues are everything. Raise your hand if you've had a physical cue and you haven't, and you've let it pass by, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there 6 months later going like, ah, shit. Man, I saw this coming. I knew I wasn't going to be happy. I gave it a good try, and you're out the door anyways. Try and have conversations, not confrontations, but conversations about what your needs are, because you are important. The company will take as much as it wants from you because it's a business relationship. Okay? There's another thing. I just posted this on Twitter the other day. Don't forget that you are in a business relationship with a company. Even if you are in the best teams, it always comes down to business decisions, especially in a market like this. So as much as you want to fall in love with the company and be their best cheerleader and do all that, you can still do that while still understanding that it's a business decision and that anything could happen at any moment. And that goes for you, right? You could leave. You could be like, hey, guess what? I got a knock on my door, and all the things that make me physically ill or make my gut go in the morning, or I've had issues with that haven't been course corrected by my leadership when I've brought it to them 3 different times in 3 different ways. You're going to get that opportunity in your next organization. And you're going to carry those questions through with you. How do you handle conflict between team members, right? You're asking this of the hiring manager. So you see how I'm kind of like pulling this whole swirl into like a whole endpoint, right? You're going to be confident enough knowing that who you are and what you stand for as a human being. You're not going to circumvent that in process because of a big name, because I did that and I held up 2 middle fingers and walked out of there 8 minutes later. I was like, are you kidding me? Right? So honestly, check your gut, talk to your family, make sure and again, whatever family means to you, talk to those that you love, those that support you, and have them gut check you too. And if it keeps coming to the back end point, you know that it's time to go. And it's okay. Look at my resume. I've been in places for 18 months, and I've jumped for either money or responsibility, or because I've left bad leadership. And I'm going to be honest with you, 90% of it is bad leadership.
We have Tim with us, and I see his hand raised up. Would you like to ask a question to Sydney?
No, actually, I kind of wanted to kind of sound off on the question that Kat asked. I think it was Kat about like when the time to look is, and I feel like the time to evaluate your relationship with your employer is the time when your employer evaluates their relationship with you, like the time when you do your like annual or quarterly reviews or whatever like that. Like that's the time when I, look and see like, am I, what do I think, what I like, and what do I don't like, and things like that. I will also have stated this publicly, and something I advocate for is like, looking for a job is a skill, right? Interviewing is a skill. Resume writing is a skill that you have to develop, and you can't do it when you're under duress, right? The time to train for a marathon isn't when you have to run the marathon, right? You do it
Mm-hmm.
beforehand. So I also take that time to apply for jobs, to take interviews, to get offers,
Mm-hmm.
to see what my skill set is worth. Well, first of all, to see what they're looking for, how the interview process go at different companies, and
Mm-hmm.
then to see what my skill set is worth. Because then when my employer comes back and says, "Hey, we're going to give you a merit raise or whatever," right? And they're offering this amount, and I know that an employer outside will offer me more. Now I can have a different conversation with my current employer, right? Um, there's a lot of reasons to routinely put yourself out there, so that, especially like I said, if you did apply for jobs and your resume is updated within the past 6 months, and then there's a riff, you're already kind of ready to go, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
already been. You're not. Oh gosh, I have to learn how to interview now because I haven't done it in 5 years. And what does it look
Right.
like now? Um, so that's what I think is important, is that process of marketing yourself or looking for jobs, whatever. It needs to be an ongoing thing that you do routinely, and not constantly, but it's something that you do routinely.
I love it, Tim. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Tim, thank you. That was a great perspective on the entire idea of when do you promote yourself. And it brings me to another question, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten to ask from the talent pipeline side
Sure.
how they see this type of strategy, but less in the last year and a half or so,
Mm-hmm.
about 2 years. But for several years, I made a habit of accepting interviews. So maintaining LinkedIn or what have you, whatever brings in those recruiters,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that over the course of a year, you might see a couple businesses that you're interested in the marketplace, whether you're actually
Mm-hmm.
interested in them as your employer or not,
Yeah.
and accepting interviews from them just to go through a low or no stakes
Mm-hmm.
interview process,
Yep.
and keep those tools sharp, right?
Yep. There's no shame in that game. I'm totally honest with you. Talk to as many people as you can because you never know how your next opportunity is going to represent itself. It's okay. It's okay to do that because what you're doing is you're learning. You're learning about it. And hopefully, you know, it that's another thing. It's our own impression of how many times we interview or what we're doing that's going to stifle us from actually moving forward. Do it. You're just having look at it as you having a conversation with a potential new opportunity. That's it. It doesn't mean you have to take it. It doesn't. But what if you do? And what if it's the dream job? You know, I think it's more than okay to have conversations. There's somebody who's very close to me that's um, in our circles on Twitter, and I'm not going to call them out because I don't have permission to say this for them personally, but they are always taking job interviews, always, even though they're very happy where they are, because you just never know, right? And then you get to learn about environments, you get to learn about this, and then you can also refer people if you don't feel inclined, which is really appreciated from the recruiter's perspective, right? Um, I I see it as just two people having coffee, right? You never know what's going to come out of it. And you're going to learn. You're going to learn who you are, what you want, what you don't want, what kind of organization. You're going to sharpen your skills over time. I think you do it.
I really appreciate the encouragement there. When I first
Hmm.
started that habit, 6, 7 years ago, I felt a little bit like I was going rogue and hacking the system, which probably was just me thinking that tech is way cooler than it actually is. But uh, one of the surprising benefits that I got out of that was gaining the familiarity of interview processes and how they differ from company to company, but still all conform to a general pattern, reduced my personal anxiety
Yep.
when it actually mattered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once I was actually interviewing with a company that I really cared about and wanted to get the offer from and all that, it wasn't this mystical art of interviewing anymore. It was a practiced skill, kind of like what Tim was saying earlier.
Yep.
So it's really great to hear that from your side of the table. Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, treat every conversation as an opportunity, even internally, right? Because this isn't just about finding a new job externally, it's about how do you maximize where you're at. You may love where you're at. How do you get more? Because the company's looking at you for more. How do you get more out of the company? Just keep yourself open to new conversations, and see every conversation as an opportunity, right? It's this power of positivity thing that Sydney's got going on, but hopefully it inspires y'all to try and go there, right? Because I bet at the end of the day, you all are pretty damn cool in your own special way, and that is what we want to see. Do we have more questions here? I feel like we have more questions here.
Sydney, I must say that I'm totally loving this conversation. At some point, I am having happy tears as well, to be very honest. So,
Are you? See?
yeah, yeah, so I'm
Good.
really, really loving this conversation.
Good.
So, Marino, do you have any questions or thoughts?
No, I honestly appreciate this conversation so much, Sydney, and I think it's very eye-opening for myself as well to really reassess some of my own worth in this industry. So thank you for bringing some of this stuff up.
Yeah. I'm just checking the Twitter comments, and it says, for someone who has not had any professional experience but have built projects previously, how do I approach the experience section in my resume? Um, can I take a stab at this one? I'm guessing this is somebody who's like a new joiner to tech. So this is an interesting space, okay? This is how do you bridge into technology, right? My best advice to you is talk about your projects like it's your job, and take everything. If you're still with us, it's not excess. I didn't do that right, but talk about your projects and what you've done, because you've either spearheaded something, you've done something on an individual contribution. Make sure your GitHub or your Stack Overflow or whatever you're using, kind of your tech portfolio, talk about those projects like they're your job, because they kind of are, right? If you are focusing your time and energy on projects to get yourself noticed, talk about them like they should get you noticed. A lot of times when I see people who are kind of trying to break into the industry, is they'll talk about what they're doing, to keep the lights on at home, and then on the bottom they'll do projects and they'll just list out the names. They don't give you the meat and the guts of the projects. So if I were you, get involved in community. There's a lot of people on GitHub that are more than willing to have your beautiful mind be part of their project, because I bet you're going to give them something from an outside perspective that they couldn't see because they're so close to it, right? Get involved. Get involved, get involved, get involved. And yes, I know it's not going to render a whole lot right up front. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But then you can actually say, well, I coded this and I did this. And it shows the propensity that you are able to do the thing that the thing is being hired for, even though it's not paid experience, still get it on your resume. And then again, if you want to meet with me, go ahead and drop me a DM. I'm totally happy to help with that. Um, there's another one, Atharva um, said here, I believe my networking skills are subpar at best, and I want to know what steps are required to make a person like me, quote, quote, more and more networkable. This is really more about how comfortable you are, right? And how do you get comfortable with yourself? Because talking about yourself is, we've been told for centuries, don't talk about yourself. It makes you look like you're, full of yourself, that you've got tons of ego, you've got this, you've got that. Talk about yourself. I'm telling you, start to get good. Practice on your peers, practice on your family, your siblings, whomever will listen. But get that exercise of being able to talk about yourself. First, sit down and start writing about yourself. And then start to maybe just read it to yourself in the mirror. Because you have to be in the act of speaking the words to get comfortable with the words. Hear yourself talk about yourself. That's what I would say. And then just start networking. Just, hey, I'd like to network with you. Hey, I'm in similar pools as you. Can we have a conversation? Can we have coffee? Can we this? Can we that? Just put yourself out there. You got a 50-50 chance. It's either yes or no. There's no maybe. It's either yes or no. And a lot of times people say yes. So I hope that one was good.
I'm going to jump in here really quick because you
Yeah.
reminded me of something that made me feel super silly and
Yay.
possibly borderline crazy years and years ago.
Yeah.
Before I was comfortable really speaking to people, period. And I know that that's an anxiety that a lot of, tech and engineering minded people face.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have been able to self promote at all effectively just because I didn't have the comfort with the basics of communication.
Yep.
And it was an unexpected side effect of, well, let's call it living in Oklahoma, but I had horses at the time. And one of the things that you would do while you're training young horses is lead them around in circles on a rope, or use up some of their energy before you actually start a training session.
Yep.
And part of the relationship building routine there is to constantly have that a vocal dialogue going, just to allow that auditory reassurance between you and the animal. And it's an amazing way to build a relationship with an animal. But more than that, it actually freed me up to be vulnerable and silly and experiment with words and things like that. I'm not great at that whole practice in front of a mirror routine. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work for me. It is way too on the spot. I know, right? Like a developer advocate that can't look at themselves in the mirror for practice or something like that. It sounds ridiculous, but this was a baby step. And then I ended up transferring that to other animals even while I was taking those baby steps. And yes, I am the crazy person that talks to her animals. I've already learned to live with that, but it was freeing, honestly, just to have that zero judgment space to play with how you present yourself and things like that. So
Well, I'm going to
thank you for
stand
touching on it.
here and say thank you for saying that, but in no way, shape, or form are you crazy. Because I do the same shit. I talk to my dog. I talk to my, I talk to my, I garden. It's part of my therapy. I talk to my plants. I have conversations with my plants on like conflict that I have to resolve. I talk to my plants, and it gives me the encouragement, and it gives me the ability to sort it out before I get there, right? So I 100,000% agree with you. Like, talk to whatever, communicate whichever way that you feel most comfortable with, but get in the practice of doing it so you know what you know, because honestly, you know what you know, regardless of what that other person is going to say, right? There are people who have that acute awareness all the time, and then there's the rest of us, right? Where it's, do I speak up? Do I speak up? Do I say this? Do I do this? Yes, you do. You use your voice because it's powerful. You use your voice because I bet you it's the solve on the other end of the problem. Like there's this great great example I have. And I was at KubeCon in 2017, and a bunch of us were there from the company I was working at. And the SVP of engineering was there, the CTO was there. All these leaders were at the end of the table, and then like there was the rest of us on, the rest, the rest of us. And I was sitting there, and right next to me was a person who just got hired but joined us for KubeCon. And at the end of the table, they were like, "Oh man, we really got this problem," and da 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 da. It was a huge technical problem. Well, the person that was sitting there that had just started, literally was like 2 days in, and then came to KubeCon with us, was like, kind of raised his hand and said, "Well, did you think about it doing it this way?" And they looked at him like, and I was like, "Oh shit, here it goes," because in normal large organizations, it's like, "Oh, who invited you to the conversation?" kind of stuff. He had the answer. All it took was them to have someone else raise their voice, speak their mind, and he solved a multi-million-dollar issue at a Mexican food restaurant in the middle of Austin, Texas. It was the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen, and supported all of the work that I have been toting ever since then. Use your voice. It is strong and loud. And if it makes people uncomfortable, good, because it means change, right? I mean, don't be rude or mean or all that stuff. But if you're right, you're right. And if you got the answer, you got the answer. And nobody will know that until you voice. How are we doing on time? Everybody still with us?
Yeah, we have one more question in the audience. Would you like to take that up as well?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
Let
so
me see.
Prasoon,
What is it?
yeah, so Prasoon says, I'm a fresher going to join a company on Jan, have multiple intern offers. How to decide which tech stack or company will be the best choice for my future?
Ooh, hi. Welcome to the wild world of tech. Um, First of all, congratulations. That's really, really good. I'm glad to hear that you have a lot of opportunity. There are so many things. Um, this has just got to go like, what are you more closely aligned with the company and with the product? That's where you start. How many questions have you asked about the team, right? And it's okay to do that even with an offer. You can go back and ask some more justification types of questions, because if you're looking at a whole set of offers, depends on what you're driven by. Are you driven by money? Are you driven by name brand? Are you driven by execution? Are you driven by how much you're going to be involved? Right? Because you're just starting out. So how much of it are you going to get your hands on and get your feet wet with the product itself? Ask those kind of questions and see where it aligns. See where that feels, and then go with your gut. You know, I took a job fresh out of college that I thought it was all sparkles and all ooh, and it was the worst job I ever had. It chewed me up and spit me out. It was so bad. It was this really fancy company thinking that I'm going to use my degree, and I ended up in technology. I got a degree in fashion, and here I am in technology. And I left fashion behind me 18 months after I got into it because it was so bad. That was just my personal experience, right? What I thought I wanted was not who I was. So do a little soul searching there. Um, Take all of your offers and put them side by side and read them, and then start to think about who's the company, what's the culture, and how much impact am I going to have in this. That's where I would go. Only you have the answer to that question. So good luck.
Answering that. Kat,
Mhm.
Marino, if you have any final thoughts, or then otherwise we can, I will share the outro and then we end the space. Otherwise, this can go on for too long. I don't want to end this space only. Yeah.
Well, we always have more time. Anytime I'm around. And all of you, I invite you to connect with me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and just message me if you need anything. I am more than happy to help.
Yeah, so I'm like really glad we did this space today and talked about tech hiring and what are some things to keep in mind and all the other amazing things that you shared about the human aspect. I
Hmm.
totally loved it, and I can't express how much I loved your answers. This was like a gold conversation, Sydney, and I
Oh,
wish
yay!
this could go on for too long, to be very honest. I related to today's conversations at so many levels, and I want to really thank you, Sydney, for agreeing to this today. And I
Of
won't
course.
speak for others, but for me, hearing your tips and advice about things um, like we could do for getting hired was like truly inspiring and motivational. So I also like I'm definitely going to be listening to the space once again and make some notes about everything you said.
Yeah,
And I also hope our audience enjoyed this conversation and got as many insights as I did as well. Also, a
right.
big thanks to my co-host Kat and Marino as always. And Sydney, would you like to add some closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, just believe in yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else. Make sure that your needs are met, and whatever that means. It could be from financial to corporate. What is the word? I can't even think of it. But like being piece of something bigger than your own, but also make sure you look out for yourself because tech is a chew you up and spit you out kind of environment if you let it. Don't let it because you're shining and you're bright and you have something to say and don't forget that. So just believe in yourself.
Thank you, Sydney. Um,
Hmm.
oh, Marino, yes.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for that, Sydney. I think 2024 is going to offer up so many more opportunities for folks, but go back and review this Twitter space just to be able to capture some of those key points to figure out how you want to form your strategy and resume for 2024. Also, we have another Twitter space tomorrow. Akansha, do you want to tell people about it?
Yes, so tomorrow we are going to do another Twitter space with Neela. She's from Fiberplane. So we are gonna be talking about observability within your applications and how you can use those metrics to improve performance. So if that's something that interests you, please join us tomorrow evening, like in India time, and let's have a good chat. And yeah, so I think we can now end this space. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Kat, Marino, Tim as well. And have a great day ahead.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.